My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm 24 years old, originally from a small town in Georgia, but currently living in Nashville, Tennessee. My life has been a typical one. College, friends, never go to church on Sundays, and the occasional struggle with faith. I'm someone who's always found in the nightclubs every weekend with my friends, drinking, dancing, and also fornicating. But in February 2024, everything changed when I had a dream that felt more real than anything I've ever experienced. It was a vision, a terrifying journey to a place beyond the living, the underworld. On the night of February 10th, I went to bed like any other night. But that night, I found it very difficult to fall asleep because my cousin came to visit me in my house, and she was disturbing my sleep. I didn't know what time I fell asleep. But little did I know, I was about to embark on a journey that would put fear in my heart and soul. In the dream, I found myself standing before a dark and forbidding landscape. The place looked like my small town, but it is not. The environment looked so scary, and a chilling silence filled the space. As I looked around, I realized I was not alone. I saw some of my friends, whom I used to go clubbing with every weekend, and my ex-boyfriend, and some old-time schoolmates. Everybody was so quiet. No one was talking to anyone. I wanted to speak to some of my friends, but I couldn't. It was as if someone was holding me standstill. When you see the faces, you can see every face looked very sad and worry. Immediately, something dropped in my mind, that it is the Judgment Day. Then tears started rolling down my face, and I started remembering all my bad behaviors. The clubbing, the drinking, the smoking, and the fornication, all of it dropped into my mind, one after the other. After a few minutes, we heard very loud and horrible voices from above where we were standing. Immediately, we all rose up our heads at once to see where those voices were coming from. Standing tall above us were two formidable figures, which one find it very difficult to see their faces clearly. As we saw them standing, they then turned to their left, and there stood two big chairs like a king's throne with a beautiful crown on each throne. They sat and put on the crowns, and on the crown it was boldly written, "The God of the dead" on the other man's crown, and "The King of the Underworld" also on the other one. Their presence was overwhelming, and their gaze pierced through, especially me. The God of the dead was a harsh and imposing figure, giving off an atmosphere of authority. He held a great book in his hands, inscribed with names and deeds. I watched in horror as souls appeared before him, trembling in fear. He opened the book and began to read aloud their lives, every action and thought laid bare. The God of the dead carefully recorded every sin, every moment of doubt, and every act of kindness. There was no escaping the truth of one's life. Next to the book, a pair of scales stood, weighing the souls. Good deeds were placed on one side, sins on the other. The weight determined their fate. For lukewarm Christians, those who lived with a foot in both worlds, their insincerity was exposed. The God of the dead showed them how they had strayed from their faith, revealing the true state of their hearts. The souls of unbelievers and the lukewarm were separated. I saw that the unbelievers were made to face an immediate descent into the depths of torment, which was so terrible to witness. I was part of the unbelievers because I never went to church or believe in anything concerning Christ. But I was not sent into the depths of torment. I was separated, standing on top of one unique stone, while the lukewarm Christians were given a glimpse of the paradise they could have inherited, only to have it mercilessly snatched away. In my vision, the God of the dead is the keeper of the book of deeds, as I have already said earlier. He held an immense, ancient book in his hands, which is the book of deeds. This book was a detailed record of every person's life, capturing every action, word, and thought. It was as if the book itself was alive, beating with the energy of each soul it represented. Before him, souls were stripped of all pretense. There was no hiding or lying. The truth of my whole life since I was born into the world was laid bare. Everything is recorded in that ancient book in his hands. I thought I was left alone to see others' bad or good deeds, but hey, no. I heard my name with a very strong and scary voice. Sarah Thompson, come forward. In fact, when I heard my name being called, I started to break down, shaking like a leaf. As I moved forward, the God of the dead looked at me, and he started reading out all what I have done on earth with my body. He mentioned all the sins that I've committed, even those that I can't remember I did. But when he mentioned them, they immediately dropped into my mind like I am watching a movie. The day, the time, and how I committed those sins appeared in my eyes. The God of the dead had a strange ability to see through every face, exposing the true nature of each soul. For we, the unbelievers, this meant confronting the reality of our rejection of God. Beside the book of deeds stood a great set of scales, the scales of judgment. This device weighed the good deeds and sins of each soul, providing a tangible measure of their spiritual state. The God of the dead carefully placed each soul's actions on the scales, watching as the balance tipped one way or the other. Everybody, most especially me, I was asked to stand on the scale, and when I did, my bad deeds weighed me down, and then I started crying bitterly and regretfully. In my dream, once the scales had determined the soul's standing, the God of the dead pronounced the final judgment. I don't know if he had the right to do so, but he did, because I thought it is the Almighty God who only has the right to judge us and send us to eternal destruction. In my revelation, the God of the dead had the authority to assign souls to their respective places in the afterlife. In the underworld, the God of the dead maintained the sacred order. He ensured that the rules governing the afterlife were strictly adhered to, preventing chaos and maintaining the balance of justice. At the entrance to the underworld, the God of the dead served as the gatekeeper. He controlled who could enter and leave the realms of the dead, ensuring that no soul escaped its rightful place. This role emphasized his absolute authority over the domain of the deceased. The God of the dead, as I saw him in my vision, was not just a figure of fear, but a representation of ultimate justice and truth. Standing beside the God of the dead was the king of the underworld, a figure of immense darkness. He carried a stick, not of gold, but of shadow and despair. His role was clear, to govern the realm of punishment and torment. The king of the underworld used chains that bound the souls of the cursed. These chains were not just physical, but emotional, each link forged from regrets and the pains of unrepented sins. After the God of the dead had finished passing judgment, he then handed us over to the king of the underworld for our eternal punishment. I saw a huge pit, an endless hole where screams echoed. The king ruled over this hole, and within it were souls being tormented by their worst fears and failures. It was a place where every unconfessed sin manifested into a personal nightmare. This was not just a place of physical pain, but of spiritual anguish. The flames were fed by the soul's rejection of God's grace. It was a place where hope was a distant memory. I was sad in my dream and felt regretted of being born human on earth. For the lukewarm Christians, there was a specific torment. The king would show them moments when they felt God's presence, only to remind them of their failure to fully commit. It was a cruel game of what could have been. The most horrifying revelation was the complete absence of love. In this place, every soul knew they were utterly alone, separated from God's love forever. It was the ultimate despair. As I witnessed these terrifying sights, a profound sadness washed over me because I was also part of the souls that were going down the hole of hopelessness. The reality of hell and the fate of those who reject God's love was more real than anything I could have imagined. Suddenly, the God of the dead turned to me. His eyes, filled with a mixture of sorrow and sternness, seemed to see right through my soul. "You have been shown this place for a reason," he said. "Return and tell others. Warn them of the reality of this place. There is still time, but it is running out." With that, I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. I knew I had experienced something beyond a mere dream. It was a vision, a divine warning. Since that night, my life has changed drastically. I've felt an urgent need to share what I saw, to warn others of the reality of hell and the consequences of a lukewarm faith. My social life has taken a back seat as I've dedicated myself to prayer, Bible study, and sharing my testimony. Many have called me crazy, but I know what I saw. I've felt the weight of souls and the importance of sharing God's truth. I urge you, dear brothers and sisters who are watching this video from Wise Walk channel, to consider the state of your soul. Are you living a life fully committed to Christ, or are you standing on the edge, unsure and uncommitted? The time is now to choose, for the reality of the underworld is not just a story, it is a destiny awaiting those who reject the love of God. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more content. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest content. See you in our next video.